Welcome back to the channel. If you saw the video I posted a couple days ago, I did a review on the Scopemate S28 and the tried and true TriggerCam that I've had for quite a while. Ended up pulling the video down. Quick explanation why. Again, if you're someone that saw it, you'll understand why. But had some issues with the reticle focus with the S28 that I was really unaware of when I filmed because of how you focus it, things like that. I explained what the reason was on why it wasn't focused. I explained how it's a simple fix that's really easy to take care of, and that it does focus when you do it correctly. So I'll kind of explain how it's different from any other camera I've used, or really things we know about optics, and how to do it. The reason I pulled the video down was I had a lot of accusations that I was intentionally trying to badmouth Scopecam, or that TriggerCam had somehow endorsed the video for me to badmouth Scopemate. So wasn't the case. I don't obviously have a very big channel or do a lot of reviews. Anything I do, whether it's on the channel, talking to someone at a match about it, at any of the training classes I instruct, I always try to be very honest about a product, whether I like it, dislike it, maybe like certain things, just like certain things. So maybe a little salty. Again, pulled the video down. I'm not trying to represent either company. I'm not trying to badmouth either company. I'm just trying to give you my honest opinion. With that being said, I did go back and focus this correctly. I'll show you in a new example what I did and what happens when you do it that way. And again, kind of why it was different from anything that we ever know. So first things first, we'll hop into the comparison. Full disclosure, I've had this one for about 3 years now. So I have used it a lot. I'm very familiar with it. I've had a couple issues with that, which I'll talk about in a second. The Scopemate, this is their new S28. I've had this model for about 3 months. Wanted to make sure I got to use it quite a bit, kind of put it through its paces before I did any sort of review on it. Prior to that, I had their previous model, which is the S18. They still do offer that model and have upgraded it to offer some of these features as well. So first things first, price point. On the TriggerCam, I don't think I can say it on YouTube anymore, but again, I'm sure you'll be able to kind of figure out what that price is. And the price made on the Scopemate S28. So you can kind of see the differences there. One thing about the Scopemate, I guess actually jumping back to the full disclosure, is they were nice enough to go ahead and offer some discount codes for anyone looking to possibly purchase it. It does have a removable battery, so if you were looking to just buy an extra battery at checkout, you could use the code MARKBATTERY, and again, that just gets you a free extra battery that you can use. If you're just looking to cut a little bit off the price, you can just use the discount code MARKS28 and save yourself a little bit of money. Unfortunately, do not have one to offer for TriggerCam, so if you want it, you're paying the full price. But we're just going to briefly kind of go over what I like, what I dislike about both units, couple differences, weights, things like that, and then we'll hop into the videos. I'll show you the mistake that I had made and how not to make that, and then we'll go from there. So starting with weight, the TriggerCam comes in at 1 pound. The S28 comes in at 11 ounces. In your hand, it feels like it's more than a 5-ounce difference. I don't know if it's just how the design's a little bit more compact and this one seems a little front heavy, but this one feels a lot heavier, but it's actually only 5 ounces heavier. So if you're a hunter, you know, like myself, hunting here in Colorado up in the mountains, and you're trying to cut ounces, you know, this saves you 5 ounces. Next thing is the app that you use. Both of them hook up to an app. That is how you focus the camera to your reticle. So you would mount this on your scope, you turn the Wi-Fi on the camera, you pull up the app on your phone, tablet, TV, whatever you want to do, so you can see the live feed, and then you focus the reticle from there. App-wise, the S28 and that previous model, that S18, both operate off the same app. I have had no issues with it. It connects when it's supposed to. It does exactly what it's supposed to when I'm focusing. When I make an adjustment, I see the immediate effect on the live feed on my phone. with the TriggerCam, I've had a couple issues where I'm connected to it and then somehow I get disconnected, or I'm on the app, I get booted off the app. I have to do kind of a hard close and reopening of the app. When it works, it works great. When it doesn't, it just gets a little annoying and takes a little bit longer because you're getting back on and off. So I do have a Samsung. I've had Samsungs for all 3 years that I've used it for. I don't know if that's maybe why. I've never tried it on an iPhone. I don't have one. But again, it does what it's supposed to. It's just sometimes it kind of freezes or boots you off, things like that. When it doesn't do that, it works great. So one other thing with the Scopemate with the app, the S28, there's a lot more features on it. There's different zoom angles or zoom powers, maybe I guess you could say. You can have a wider field of view. You can have a more narrow field of view. There's 3 different options within the app. And then there's just different options that you have on here that you don't have with the TriggerCam. For example, you can set it to when you press the power button, start recording automatically. So maybe you're a hunter out in the field, you just want to tap that button and it starts recording automatically. It also has a recoil activated recording. So if you turn that on, it stays in like a sleep or a stasis type mode. And when you shoot, it activates it and it starts saving the recording 20 seconds prior to when it felt that recoil. So again, a good feature if you're someone that's out hunting. If you have it in that recoil activated mode, you can also just tap the power button and it'll start recording again 20 seconds prior to when you touch it. So nice feature for hunting. TriggerCam, it doesn't have any of those features. So you would have to go ahead and manually turn it on, press the record button, things like that. So just kind of some differences there between the cameras. The next will be the battery. So I discussed a little bit on the S28. It has this battery compartment right here. That is removable. You can take this cap off. It has a removable chargeable battery. Again, the nice part is if you wanted to pick up an extra one, you kind of have that peace of mind if maybe you forgot to charge it, or you're at a 2-day match and didn't charge it between day 1 and day 2, or you're out in the field hunting for several days and don't want to bring external chargers. You can just pop that new battery in and you're good to go. While the battery on the TriggerCam is good, it's rechargeable only and not replaceable. So when I use this at 2-day matches, I do have to charge it after day 1 prior to day 2, or I would not have enough battery to make it through the day. So again, maybe you're out in the field hunting, you don't want to bring that external charger to have to keep this charged up. Something to kind of think about if you're making the decision between one or the other. Next is the audio. Both of them have microphones. They're on the front. So if we're mounting it here, the microphone's up on the front, obviously facing the muzzle. Both audio on both cameras are usable. I do not use them for the audio. If I am filming something, whether it's a match, a hunt, I'm going to have another external camera set up that's going to record the audio. So at a match, I want to be able to hear the RO if they're calling impact, re-engage, whatever it may be. If I'm hunting, I'm going to have something set up, maybe filming through a spotting scope that's going to catch the audio there. So it's there, it's usable. I don't use it for it, but again, it's there. It's just, if you're using the audio on this and you're shooting a match, you're probably not going to hear that RO. So just something, again, to keep in mind there. Lastly, last 2 things with differences are the buttons. So on the TriggerCam here, we have buttons. It's on the left side. There's a power button and a record button. These buttons do multiple things. Obviously, power and record. You have to hold the record button for 2 or 3 seconds to turn on the Wi-Fi. There is a way to take a picture or screenshot. I don't know if you hit both buttons at the same time. I can't remember. I've honestly never done it. But there's some type of configuration. Again, if you're hunting and wanted to take a picture of some animals through your optic, there is a way to do it. I just don't like that you have to remember what the certain configuration is or how many seconds to hold it for, things like that. And then also when it's mounted on your optic and you're behind the rifle, everything's off to the side, which is easy to access to press. But to lean my head over to see if, hey, did I remember to turn it on? Is it recording? It's kind of tough to see. And the light that flashes for recording, it's kind of covered a little bit by the housing. So you kind of have to, put some shade on it, really get your head around to see. So being off to the side isn't my favorite, just to make sure that it's on and doing what I want to. Buttons on the Scopemate are up on the top here. So we'll have 3 different buttons. You're going to have a power button, a Wi-Fi button, and a record button. So it makes it super simple. The nice part is if you want to take a picture on this one when the unit's on, you can just press the power button. And I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but under the red power button, there's a picture of a camera. So you just tap that, it takes it, saves it, and you're good to go. There's no button configuration or no hold time, things like that. You would just tap it and you're all set. I like that the Wi-Fi has its own individual button. You just hold that, and then there's actually another light over on the side that will flash kind of an orangish color to indicate that the Wi-Fi is on. And then as soon as you connect, it turns solid, so you know that you're connected to it. Same with the record button, has its own individual button off on the left here. Once you press that, it starts flashing a green light, so you know that it's recording. It's very easy to see. One thing that they changed from the S18, the buttons were on the back housing here, so kind of on that slanted part right here, and it was really nice when you were mounted on the rifle. You could see everything. You could see the buttons, you could see the light flashing, it was recording, the power's on, things like that. I wish they would have left it here because I loved it right there. With that being said, it's not the end of the world that it's up here, right? Again, if I'm on the rifle, all I really have to do is bring my head up a little bit and I can see everything, see the buttons, feel the buttons, whatever. But if they were to make a change in the future, having the buttons on the back here, I think is much more convenient for the shooter when they're using the camera. Last thing is how the units both lock up to your optic. So there's 2 set screws right here, if you can see those. Basically all you're doing is sliding it on. There's different telescoping little plastic shims in here depending on the size of your ocular, and then you're just going to torque that down to tighten it up. One thing on the TriggerCam is it's a similar system. There's just 1 screw there though, and I dislike it because I have stripped out 1 or 2 screws. I've stripped out the housing, the unit itself twice, and had to send it back to be rethreaded. I by no means am trying to crank this thing down. I'm just trying to get it tight enough. I don't know if it's maybe just the unit I got, but I have issues with it staying tight enough without stripping it out. And it's very heavy up on the top here. And I've had several matches where it'll come loose and it'll start falling mid-match because I feel like I can't get that screw tight enough. On the Scopemate, it is the exact opposite. I feel like you can crank these down if you want to, not that you need to, but you get them hand tight, and I use it on my lightweight hunting rifle. I honestly feel like I could grab this unit and pick my whole rifle up and this would not move at all. And with the TriggerCam, I'm just doing everything I can to not bump it or knock it loose. So I do like the lockup feature here. I wish it was something that TriggerCam would change. With the price you're paying for the unit, I feel like it should be built a little bit better with how it locks up. And again, I've had this one for 3 years, so maybe some of their newer models or generations, they have updated this material or however they use the lockup feature, but this one is struggling a little bit with that. So last thing on the TriggerCam that I dislike is the design, how long it is. I run all Leupold Mark IV, Mark Vs. And the issue that I run into is when I mount the camera, it hits the throw lever right here. If I want to put the camera all the way on, I would have to move that throw lever out of the way. I can then mount it fully. But I would either have to shoot at either minimum or maximum magnification in order to do that. Where I like to shoot, it's pretty centered, somewhere about that 15, 17 power. And again, that's where it hits. So you do have to back that off a little bit on the Leupolds. I know there's some other optics that it does the same thing, and there's some that it doesn't affect at all. So kind of depends on what optic you run. That's the issue I run into. With that being said, backing it off a little bit still takes great video, so it doesn't really cause an issue. The only issue I really run into is it loosens up, and throughout the match when I'm shooting with the recoil, it'll start sliding forward. and then I'll go to maybe back that magnification out to help myself find a target, and I can't because it's pinned by the camera. And I have started to wear a little bit of a detent in there, I guess you could call it, from that throw lever. So that kind of bugs me. With the Scopemate, you can put it all the way on, and it's nowhere near that. Whoops! It's nowhere near that throw lever there. So that little bit more compact design just helps. And again, that's totally optic dependent and what you're running. So that's really everything that I like, that I dislike about both units. What I'll do now is kind of hop into the issue that I had in the previous video. So everything we know about optics tells us that you should adjust your parallax, you should be adjusting your diopter to focus that reticle at max magnification. That way when you back that magnification out, the image is more forgiving, right? If you can get a crisp image at max magnification with your parallax and you back that out maybe in half, or this is a 6:24, if I maybe back it out to 15, that image is going to be much more crisp, right? Same with the reticle. If I can focus that reticle and get it extremely sharp, adjusted my diopter at max magnification, when I back it out, it's going to be even sharper. That is how you focus the TriggerCam. You put it on, max magnification, you pull your app up. They have an adjustment dial here that you focus the camera to the reticle. You want it as crisp as possible at that max magnification. Then again, when I back it out to shoot, it's even a much more clear picture at that point. That's the TriggerCam. Scopemate does it differently with this camera. How they do it, it's designed differently. I'm by no means an expert with cameras, things like that. It's designed differently. It needs to be focused on the lower magnification, and then when you zoom in to that higher magnification, it stays crisp. So the issue I had in the first video was I focused it exactly how I have focused every cam I've ever used, every scope I've ever shot. I put it on, I went to the highest magnification, got that reticle extremely crisp, and then when I go to shoot and I back off to that 12 or 15 power range, the reticle started to become blurry. So again, that's where the comments kind of came in that I was doing it intentionally, or maybe that I didn't know exactly what I was doing. However, that kind of goes against everything we've ever learned about optics. With that being said, zero issue with that at all, that's how it works. However, as the company sells these, they need to let the consumer know that that's how it works. So I read through the entire scope manual. They sent, or camera manual, excuse me, for the Scopemate. They sent me additional information on a PDF on focusing. Nowhere in any of it does it say to focus the reticle on the lower magnification. There was some comments on the previous video of people that actually have this exact camera that ran into the same issue, and basically just said, hey, if I focus it on whatever power I want to shoot, then it works great. But if you get this optic or this camera, you put it on your optic, you are going to think to focus it on the highest magnification because that's what we know about optics. That is not how it works. So make sure you really pay attention when you focus it, that you're doing it correctly. Again, I have no issue with how it works. I just think the company needs to make sure that the consumer knows that. Otherwise, I think people are going to run into the same issue that I did. So what I'll do, I'll show you some footage here. First one, the background's irrelevant. It's a berm at like 400 yards, but we're focusing on the reticle. And basically, you can see it's maxed out. The reticle is very crisp. And as I start to back the magnification out, you will notice that the reticle starts to blur. Right there, it's probably about where I would shoot, and it's starting to get blurry already. And if you back it even farther, it's not, or it's visible, but you can't really make anything out. So we'll come back in again to about where I want to shoot, and it's pretty blurry. And there's the max magnification with that crisp reticle. So that is what I did on the first video. Right? At that full power, it's extremely crisp. I will show you an example, same exact example, but I focused it the correct way this time. So it was focused on a lower magnification. For me, this was on a Mark V, so it's a 5-25. If I back it all the way out to 5, I honestly can't see the reticle enough to feel like I get a good focus. So I did it at about 10 power. I felt like I could make the numbers out well enough there to get it focused. And you'll see here, same thing, we're going to start on max magnification. And as we back out, so there's about where I'd shoot at that 15 power, still very crisp. And here, as we back out to about 10, hard to see, but still very crisp. And we'll go back in, again, there's 15, and there's 25. So it stays crisp throughout the entire magnification range. Again, that was the mistake that I had made on the first video. So I might make a separate video solely on how to focus these in case someone purchases it and doesn't see this and is having some issues. So it just needs to be done a little bit differently. Again, not a problem. You know, we just want to make sure customers know if we're a company selling a product that needs to be handled slightly differently than what we're used to. So what I did at this point is I will show you a low light comparison between both of them. I went out and I filmed with both cameras. It was about 20 to 25 minutes prior to sunrise, which is legal shooting light here in Colorado. I will kind of walk you through the distances of the targets I was looking at. This was on the Scopemate first, and then I put the TriggerCam on and it recorded because I could hear the audio, but the recording was a blank screen. It didn't pick up any sort of footage. I tried it 2 separate times and there was nothing. So I went back on a different day at the same time and did this with a different optic and ended up working, which I'll show here in a second. But basically I started with the Scopemate again about 20-25 minutes prior to sunrise. And we just bounced around at some different targets here. So the first one is that pole at 120 yards. And then we'll move to a forked tree. And this is at 200 yards. And then we will go ahead and move over to this this gate or tire satellite thing. I don't know what it is. 250 yards. And then we move out to another tree with the beat up bark on it. That is 475. And lastly, this last tree here is at 685. And I apologize for the shaking. I was just had the rifle mounted in a standing position on a tripod to make sure I could get high enough to clear some stuff in front of me. But as you can see there, very good in low light. It's actually brighter to my eye looking through it than you're seeing here on the footage. So light-wise, I would be very comfortable shooting out to that 685 in that light. With the reticle, things like that, I have a non-illuminated reticle, and I would still be very comfortable with it. So I was very pleased with that one. And then here was just a little bit of bonus footage here. Saw a little herd of mule deer. These were out at just over 1,000 yards. So I start backed off a little bit, and then I zoom that magnification in all the way. And again, light-wise, I'm comfortable shooting at that distance. Obviously, I'm not looking to shoot that far at an animal. But I was very pleased with the low light testing and conditions with the Scopemate. Again, I took that off, put this TriggerCam on immediately after, so all within about 5 minutes. Filmed twice. Filmed the whole kind of set of targets, the poles, the trees, things like that. And then there's a couple coyotes at about 600 yards. I tried filming them. Result was the same with both. I could hear the audio. I could hear myself talking and manipulating the rifle. Video was just black. No usable footage whatsoever. So I did go out the next week, and again, it was a different optic, different day, so conditions weren't exactly the same. It was the same time. But I just looked at a couple targets so we could at least have some footage. So we start off here, have a 400-yard berm. And these targets are beat up a little bit, so they're grayed out, so they are a little bit tougher to see. But that's that 400-yard berm. We'll end on the prairie dog target on the right. And then we'll go ahead and bounce over to the 550 berm. And there's a small coyote target there on the far right that we're looking at. And then we will move on to the 700-yard berm from there. A small antelope target there in the middle. And then from there we will bounce over to, it's about 850, 860, the big wolf target there. And lastly, there's a full-size IPSC or the torso target at 1,000 yards. So this was a different optic. This was an Apex Rival that I was testing out. It's a 4-32. Other than the magnification, pretty same spec to the Mark V. I don't think the footage quite did justice to what I could see through my eye. It looked very foggy in the footage, and it was not foggy whatsoever that day. With what I was seeing through my eye, through the scope or the camera and the optic, I would have been comfortable making that 1,000-yard shot at that IPSC. Going back and watching the footage, it looked like it might have been tough for me to make that shot. So it seemed like it didn't do quite as good in low light. Again, it didn't work 2 out of the 3 times, so only working 33% of the time is an issue if you're going to be using it on a hunt and need it to work when you're going to need it. But again, wanted you to at least get some sort of footage to compare it to. Lastly, what we'll do is filmed a new test looking at a handful of different targets with both cameras. We did it both on max magnification, and then we did it backed up to about that 15 power. Again, that's where I normally shoot all my matches at, and I don't really ever touch it. But you'll see the difference in a little bit of clarity there. Mostly it's mirage, right? It's Colorado, it's sunny, a lot of mirage. You'll see how tough it is to look through at that max magnification. And then when we back it off, it's a little bit more forgiving. So we will start with the Scopemate, the S28. And what we did is, again, we didn't shoot in this. We just looked at targets so we could see the differences between the 2 cameras. And the first thing that I will say is, again, I have it on the wide option here, so it's zoomed out quite a ways, which I do prefer in case I'm doing any sort of holdovers. I just like to have that wider field of view. It's very easy to crop the video, just like you would a picture, to cut it in closer if needed. So I'll show you a screenshot actually here real quick of the Scopemate on that 15 power I shoot. You can see down to that 10 mil mark down at the bottom there. So you can see down a ways. So if you're someone that maybe shoots some 22 NRL style matches, and you do a lot of those holdovers, you might want that wider field of view. And with the TriggerCam, there's one option. It is what it is. You can't adjust it. It has worked perfectly fine for me, but I'll go ahead and show you what that is in the screenshot here. And you can get down, you can kind of just start to see it, I believe, but it's the 7 mil mark. So cuts off about 3 mils of elevation compared to the Scopemate. So just wanted to see what they look like with that kind of raw footage before it's cropped to fit the screen. And all of this footage is raw footage. I have not edited anything other than cropping it to fit the screen a little bit better for you to see. And then obviously trimming it so you're not watching a bunch of nonsense on both ends. But no other editing has been done whatsoever. So what we'll do is we'll hop in with the Scopemate, the S28, on max magnification. First target here is a prairie dog, and this is just over 300 yards. Then we'll hop to a square target here. That is at 400 yards. And again, you can see how bad the mirage is that we're trying to look through on that max magnification. Then we have a set of targets here. There's about 3 or 4 of them. Those are at 620 yards. And then we will hop over to a circle target here. I had trouble finding it because I don't ever zoom in this far. But this big circle target is about 1,000 yards away. And there it is. So this is a little over 1,000 yards. And again, you can see the mirage is struggling, but the reticle is what we're focused on, and it's extremely crisp. And lastly, we have a steel antelope target here, and that is at 1,200 yards. So you see everything from about 300 to 1,200. I did not adjust the parallax. It honestly wouldn't have mattered with how bad the mirage was. I typically set mine at about 500, and I will not touch it for the entirety of a match. So that's what I did for this test, just to kind of make it fair. Moving on, same one, Scopemate S28. We're going to back that off to about that 14-15 power range. Again, this is where I shoot a match. You notice that reticle stays extremely crisp because it was focused correctly this time at the beginning. But we'll go ahead and hop through the same targets. So Prairie Dog, just over 300 yards. Steel Square here at 400 yards. Moving on to the set of targets at 620, right there. And you can see that the Mirage is a lot more forgiving on that lower magnification. Steel Circle here at just over 1,000. And again, that's why we focus typically everything on max magnification, and that's why I focus the camera that way, is when you back it out, it's more forgiving. And lastly, that Antelope, that steel target out to 1,200 yards. So you can see the Mirage looks a little bit better. You can see the reticle stays crisp, which is really the most important part. Unfortunately, with how bad the Mirage was, you're not going to get the image any crisper, and that has nothing to do with the optic or either camera. It's just the Mirage. So welcome to Colorado. We'll go ahead and hop over to the Scopemate here, or excuse me, from the Scopemate to the TriggerCam and wrap the test up. We will do the same exact thing. We're going to start on that max magnification with the TriggerCam, and we will go ahead and start on that Prairie Dog, and that's at, again, just over 300 yards. Moving on to the squares at about 400. And we'll hop over to that set of targets. Again, this is about 620-ish. We will hop out to that far circle. That is just over 1,000. And lastly, we will finish up with the Steel Antelope target. And again, that's right about 1,200. So one thing I do notice, not sure if you noticed it to your eye or not, but on the footage itself, the Scopemate looks a little bit darker. I'm not sure if it doesn't let quite as much light in. This was a extremely sunny day, not a cloud in the sky, so they were filmed back to back. So how bright this Scopemate looked and how kind of dark the TriggerCam looked were filmed in the same exact conditions. So that's not something that really matters to me. And again, you could go into editing to brighten that up if needed. But it was one thing that I noticed, that it just looks like everything it captures comes in a little bit darker, which some people may prefer. Again, I don't have a preference, just something that I noticed. So last test here, we were going to back that magnification out to that 14-15 power with the TriggerCam and walk through the same targets. So for the fourth time, Prairie Dog at 330. Got our Steel Square here at 400. Bounce over to the set of targets at 620. Move it out to just over 1,000 for the circle. And you guessed it, we'll finish at the Antelope at about 1,200 yards. So that is both the Scopemate S28 and the TriggerCam. That was the low light test. I showed you the issue that I had with, if you focus this incorrectly, that reticle starts to blur as you back it out, and I showed you how to fix it and what it looks like when you fix it. But that kind of walks you through what the camera looks like at targets. Again, that was about 300 on that Prairie Dog out to about 1,200, so pretty good gap there. Again, you can see how bad the Mirage was when you really had that magnification cranked up to the max power. But that is really everything I have on both of them. What I like, what I don't like. You know, realistically, if you're halfway good at editing videos, which I by no means think I'm great at it, you can take footage from both and make it look the exact same in editing. So I don't really see enough difference in footage. These last examples I gave here to sway me one way or the other. The things that I really start to notice with the Scopemate kind of taking a bit of a lead is the weight for hunting, the low light conditions for hunting, and I like that it locks up better and the buttons. But I'm planning on hunting a lot this fall. I would like to film a lot with this, and I think I'll probably have some low light shots, and I would be nervous that the TriggerCam just wouldn't work properly to catch it. So I'm gonna hopefully have some videos to post at the end of the year here with the Scopemate. But again, just the low light footage, the weight, even just how well it locks up. If I have my rifle mounted to my pack and I'm hiking through the mountains, you know, I'm worried that this is gonna kind of shake loose and either come out of focus, get turned, or just straight fall off. I know this isn't going to do that. So it kind of depends what you're looking for, right? If you want something for the range, a little bit of plinking, maybe shoot a PRS, NRL 22 match, both of these will work perfectly fine. So I think it's going to be kind of personal preference. I don't think you're going to buy one versus the other and say this footage is bad compared to that one. I think the footage is going to come out about the exact same. Obviously, we have a price difference and those other features that I had mentioned, but that is it. That is the comparison on them both. Like I said, I might make a quick video here in the future solely on how to focus this the correct way. I think a lot of people are going to purchase this. I think it has a very attractive price point for what it is. And I think the issue we're going to run into is if they read the manual, there's nothing in there about it, and they're going to focus it the same way that I did and run into issues and probably be a little bit upset, or maybe be reaching out to the company a lot. And, I know it's annoying to get blown up with a lot of emails or things like that. So hopefully maybe it's something they can put in the manual, or maybe send out an email when you purchase it. Hey, here's how you focus it. But I think that would solve a lot of issues moving forward. Lastly, I'm going to try to film. I have a match coming up this weekend, just a one-day practice NRL Hunter match. Hoping to film with this. It's supposed to be super, super windy, like 30, 40 mile an hour winds. So I don't know if I'll be able to set up the GoPro because the wind might blow it over. So if that's the case, I'm not going to film it. Fingers crossed I can, so you can get some kind of live footage shooting through this. I'll be shooting a 25 PRC, so a Magnum caliber with a little bit of recoil on a lightweight rifle, so you can see how it handles that. But again, hopefully we can get that filmed and posted here shortly. If you stuck it out this long, I appreciate you. I know that was very long-winded. I know the price points of these are a lot of money to some people, including myself. So just wanted to try to help you make an informed decision. If you have any questions, comments, anything like that, obviously just throw them below. I try to answer as soon as I can. If you want to stick around to hopefully see the NRL Hunter video, hit that subscribe button. And again, if I can get it filmed, that'll be posted next week. So you guys can check that out, and we'll go from there. But I appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thank you.